Hey Kyle, thanks for using Racers360. Great to be working with you again. Got some lot of great things that we can be working on here. So let's go ahead, start digging into things. Obviously, a little bit of traffic here in turn one. What I'm looking for is kind of where you're usually would be braking. I'd assume on the normal line, a little bit closer to the end of the wall. So overall, I think you get back on the line exactly where I'd like to see. A little early to throttle, but I know we're offline, probably what causes us to overslow. So all looking good through turn one. Just make sure you're typically using a little bit more road out to the left. We'll have to hustle it more back to the right, or hustle it a little more aggressively, I should say. So just in case, hard to tell. I know we had a little bit of traffic this lap. It's easy to not use all that track, but I do want to see you get out there, but hustle it back to the right. So where we want to start to get into things here is going to be our turning back to the left to set up for turn three. We're turning a little bit too early here, and that's causing us to apex kind of this left-hand turn too early as well. So you can kind of see how we are apexing just before the start of the curb here on our left. I like to apex this just about a third of a car length past the start of this curve. And what's happening is when you apex this too early and you want to bring in more entry speed, and I think there is more on the table here, the car is really pushing you to the right. So with more speed, you can't hold the car left to set up for turn three. So what ends up happening is with that later turn-in point, that later apex, the car angle is going to be a little bit more parallel naturally with the back end of this curve. So that means with more speed, you're going to have an easier time holding it left as we approach the brake zone. So you can see here, we arrive and you have to really turn it more in here. And this is where I want your hand straighter because this is where the brake zone really happens. So let's work on a little bit later of a turning point, just about a half car length later. It's going to set you up with a straighter hand in this brake zone to allow you to tack up the hill a little bit more. The next thing is, I want to see you hold it left just a little bit longer. I almost want to see you kind of hold left and kind of follow that white line just to the end of the curve. You can kind of see we're coming off that all the way to the left before we get to the end of the curve. And by the time we really turn in, we're already in the middle of the road. So a part of that is that early apex. Part of it is we're just not quite disciplined enough holding it left a little bit longer. And that is making turn three tighter than it needs to be. So really focus a little bit later turning, apexing more just after the start of the curve on our left-hand side. Then you'll be able to brake with straighter hands, hold it left a little bit longer before throwing it in back to the right. And then you'll be straighter hands over the bump. And then you also should land a little bit easier with more opened hands as well. And that should allow you to get back to full throttle earlier as well. So on exit, because we have to turn more aggressively, you still had a little bit more steering input that I'd like to see on exit. And that's not allowing the car to land nicely and go. You land and fight it a little bit, and then you only get back to full throttle pretty much as we turn in for turn four. And I sort of want to land and be back to full throttle here, and then holding full throttle through turn four here. I know you're working it. This is an area here where I think there's a little bit on the table. I'd like to see you typically, because it's on throttle, we should have understeer here. If you're dealing with oversteer, and it doesn't look like you are, that's a little bit different, but I've never had oversteer here. So typically the way I approach turn four is I drive it and I hold that full throttle until it starts to take me off the inside, until I start to move away from this curve. So experiment with that. See if you can make the car understeer off that curve a little bit. And as the car actually starts to understeer, that's when I've got a little bit of throttle manipulation. I think you can be a little bit more on it through turn four. Then into the S's. I want to see you commit back to full throttle here. We're a little lazy into the S's here. See how we're kind of holding partial, then a lift, and then back to throttle, then another lift. It's a little bit messy in here. And I know it's a really intimidating place. Your line's picture perfect. At the end of the curve here on our left, bam, turning in, you're apexing, boom, the start of that curve. Exactly what I want to see. So what we can clean up on the throttle is get back to full throttle, full throttle, lift, and then boom, I like to start to feed that throttle in right about here as I approach it. So you have a longer full lift, but we'll spend more time at full throttle as well. I don't like to see kind of the in between. I don't know what I'm doing. Let's have a plan on the racetrack. Carry full throttle, lift it earlier if you need, but let's get rid of this partial throttle stuff. Get back to full throttle. In here, I really like what you're doing. Awesome job. Nice job getting back to here. Turn 5, um, I want to say we should actually slow the car down just a little bit more. I'd like to see, I love where you're picking up the throttle is awesome, but where we get back to full throttle is only here, which is just way too late. Treat turn 5, and it's easy, right? Because it's like you've just gone, 4, you barreled through 3, 4, down into the S's. It's all really fast. So it's easy to treat turn 5 more like an entry speed corner. Treat it a little bit more like an exit speed corner. I'd rather see you be a little bit slower from here to here so that you can get back to full throttle now and be faster all the way to turn 6. And this is a corner that I've been guilty with kind of my teammates where I'll gain a tenth on entry, but I'll lose 2/10 to them on exit because I'm just a little late to full throttle. Let's just back it back up a little bit in 5. Maybe just add a little bit more brake pressure. I don't necessarily think you should brake earlier. Hold that little bit more brake pressure, a little bit longer, slow it down. Just, it's something like just 2 miles an hour more so that you can get back to full throttle earlier. Like, I really want to see you nice, clean, initial throttle, work towards full throttle, full throttle. And you can see your hesitation. Typically, that's too much entry speed or too much apex speed, I should say. Um, Rest of the lap looks awesome. Turn 6, I love your entry speed. Turn 7, you look great. Look at this, barreling it in there. No throttle, no throttle. Throttle at the end of the curve. Awesome. Get back to full throttle. That's perfect. Turning in, nice turning point. Trail braking pretty damn nicely into turn 7. Throttle exactly where I want to see it. Back to full throttle aggressively here. Awesome job. Love it. Let's go into turn 10A here. 10A, thought that looked great as well. Trail braking to the curb, using all of the curb. This is the one area, though, that we're a little lazy in. So what I'd like to see, jump back a little bit farther. So let's see, where do we commit back to full throttle? We are finally fully committed back to full throttle out of 10B here. So the goal for us in turn 10 and 10A and 10B is how can I get back to full throttle as early as possible? I really want to see you back and committed to full throttle here. So what I'd like to see out of turn 10A here is we're a little lazy on throttle. See how we never get back to full throttle? And then we sort of carry throttle, a little bit of a lift, but then we're right back to throttle. So what I want to see you try to work on here in 10A is let's get a squirt of full throttle, and then as your hands turn to the 10B, that's where I want the lift to come. Full lift here to get that rotation, maybe a little bit longer of a lift, initial throttle, get that right front tire onto the apex curve here in 10B, and give up a little bit of the apex speed here so that you can get back to full throttle here. You're going to gain a lot more by getting back to full throttle here, even with being maybe 2 miles an hour slower, than trying to roll that speed through the apex and really delaying where you get back to full throttle. So treat 10B, it's all about getting back to full throttle as early as possible. So as you commit back, square to full throttle in between 10A and B. As you turn in for 10B, full lift, wait, go. Maximize that full throttle. Under the hill here, I like to be just a little bit more tight to the inside. I see we're lifting over the top of the hill here. So see if we can just be closer to having your head go under, maybe closer to the white square. I'm usually kind of right in between the red and the white square. It should be pretty much flat for us over the top of the hill here. Often when I see drivers lifting, it's because they're not as close to the inside as they should be. You look like you get pretty close. It's hard to tell on the camera. I think we could be a little bit tighter in early. Maybe hold it a little bit tighter, longer here before we crest over the top of the hill. But this is, again, an area that we're a little bit lazy with the throttle. Now, super intimidating place, right? Turn 12 Road Atlanta doesn't get more intimidating than this. But what I'm trying to avoid is see how long we're just kind of at this partial throttle. Let's back this up. So partial throttle starts here, lasts all the way to the exit of 12. That laziness is worth a ton of time. And what that typically is a lack of confidence, right? Like, where am I going to place the car? What do I need to execute on? What I want to see you try to work towards is let's be flat over the top of the hill, flat, 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 and lift earlier. So what I'm trying to avoid is just long periods of time spent at partial throttle. And you're intimidated, right? So to work up to it, let's hold full throttle, but lift absurdly early. Similarly, what I want you to do in the S's. And then lift, 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 feed throttle, feed throttle, feed throttle, full throttle here. And then what you're going to do is, like I said, lift absurdly early here and just hold off it. It's going to feel slow, but that's going to give you the confidence to hold that full throttle a little bit deeper. And then the next lap, a little bit deeper. And the next lap, a little bit deeper. I don't know exactly where the limit of the car is for you in turn 12. You might need a full lift. Maybe you don't even need a full lift. But what I know for sure is I don't want to see you just spending long periods of time at like that 20 to 50% throttle rate. We're better off, especially when we're getting used to the car, used to the track, being super conservative on when we lift, but man, be full throttle up to that point. And I think that's going to help you gain the confidence into turn 12, because there's definitely a lot of low-hanging fruit for us in turn 12. So hopefully that makes sense. I really appreciate you using Racers360. Hopefully this is helpful. Best of luck this week. And if you got any questions, just email us. We're always here. And yeah, look forward to the next one.